So thanks for coming to Freelance Friday, and please welcome Phil Lavin.
Well, thank you, everyone. This is a presentation I've given so many times to the people sitting next to me in planes, and so it's the first chance to really give a presentation like this to a group. And it's really nice to be able to do it. Just think of the flights that I've saved, 25 flights. That's pretty good. So I get to leverage it. Well, by way of background, what is an entrepreneur? Here's a couple of definitions of it. Basically, the way I see the key words there are risk and enterprise, assuming the risk and creating an enterprise. And, one of the things that you probably, just to sort of share with you some personal comments, I come from a family that's rather entrepreneurial, and as does Ben. And so like Ben's dad, he created several departments at leading hospitals and universities, and that's entrepreneurial to do that. The risk of it and creating a new enterprise. And Ben's grandfather, he created a company called Monroe Accounting, and he had to bear the risks of it when that building burnt down, and when he had to re-scramble to get everybody's tax returns out. And I can't think of any better example of someone assuming and standing behind the risks of an enterprise. My dad was an optician on the side in addition to being a government employee. Our grandfather was a house painter. Ben's great-grandfather, he opened up a store. So a lot of us have this entrepreneurial blood in our genes, and you don't have to really just do what I did, which is to create an 850-person international company. That's sort of like, I call it the ultimate. But entrepreneurs are among us, they're with us in every single shape, manner, and fashion. So I'm going to try to give you a sense of my personal background, how I got to where I was when I started this, and what are some of the issues. So, it's like diving into a swimming pool. You're an entrepreneur. You think you want to do something neat, like you want to be a statistical consultant. And so you say to yourself, well, how much capital does it require? So it's like a pool. You dive in the pool, but you really need a strategy when you get in the water. You have to decide whether or not do you know how to swim? Are you going to wade? What are you going to do if you land and there's somebody else already there? And then how do you get out of the pool? What's the right way? So I've done all that stuff. I got in the pool, I swam, I learned how to swim the laps, I learned how to have fun in the water, and I learned how to get out of the pool with my bathing suit still on and be able to dive in again and still like doing it and recommend doing it to other people. So that's what I call the exit strategy. And so right now, today, you have so many resources available to you to become an entrepreneur and to be able to succeed at it. More so than in my day when I started this out over 30 years ago. So take advantage of those resources. Those are some TV shows that I'm sure you're all familiar with, The Apprentice and Shark Tank and some of these others. There's a lot of great lessons learned, and there's resources that are available, and I'll summarize with that. So I won't be able to cover all these topics, but I will. But at least they're covered here in the talk. So by way of background, I went to University of Rochester. I got a bachelor's in mathematics, got my PhD from Brown University 4 years later. I knew I loved statistical modeling. I knew I liked medicine, but I didn't want to be a doctor. I knew that I enjoyed and loved science. I knew I liked to talk and I liked to write. So I had a lot of things I liked doing, and I had a real good business sense. But again, I never really imagined how we would put all that together. So here I am getting my degree, my doctorate in 1972. Spent a few years teaching, learning how to do clinical trials, building my knowledge base, building my credibility, building my reputation. Wind up going to Harvard Medical School. Our group was moved up there, and we became the Department of Biostatistics there. So I had a lot of stuff under my belt before I made that first venture. And those ventures are those things in blue. So I founded the statistical consulting company called Boston Biostatistics. It was me and a few other faculty at Harvard School of Public Health. We love doing consulting. You know, we love the ego trip that came with it. Here's this big company, Merck or Serono, and they'd come to you and you'd help them out. You'd solve their problems. You know, they'd come to you and you'd be the expert. So that was what got me into it in the first place. That was the kick. That was my passport into it. The idea that I could help somebody and get paid nicely for it. But I didn't do it for the money. I did it because I liked the feeling of helping and building and creating. And so then I formed this for-profit company, Boston Biostatistics. And then I had several grants that had come through in the Harvard medical area. And the funny thing happened along the way to my grants. I had these 4 grants, and what the hospital that I was affiliated with, Beth Israel Deaconess, they lost $20 million. And they couldn't support a campus location for me. So I had to create this not-for-profit to be able to have my facility, my research work, be done right close to the hospital. So I created this not-for-profit 4 years after I created 5 years after I created the for-profit enterprise. So back then I created what was a C Corp. There's S Corps and LLCs, so I created a C Corp back then. That's because I wanted to limit my liability, no LLCs. And then the not-for-profit, I did it to house all my government work and work that I did in the public sector. And then most recently, last year, when I left the large enterprise that I built, that Boston Biostatistics, that grew to 850 people with offices all around the globe, Japan and Israel and Paris and London, and offices that I didn't even get to visit. And I was the CEO and founder of that company for 24 years. And then I'm now still active with my research foundation, and I'm now active with my independent consulting venture called Lavin Consulting LLC. So I'm a 3-timer. I've got an LLC that I founded that's successful. I founded a C Corp. And I've also have a not-for-profit. So I'm like a triple-decker entrepreneur. So that's sort of like my thing. So what's my skill set? I'm regarded as a high-end biostatistician. I design clinical trials. So if somebody wants to figure out how to use Lipitor, what kind of a study, and I was the chief biostatistician for Lipitor, and that's Park Davis, Pfizer, and we designed 17 trials. Those trials got run. We analyzed the data. The FDA approved it. Lo and behold, it became a large seller, and I have 48 other products like that I've been a part of. So I'm the leader in the clubhouse with 49 FDA approvals, and then next week I'm looking at number 50. That'll be in the news too. So I get into data analysis, and I also get into the consequences of my work with respect to public health. So all of that I earned and learned while I was at SUNY at Buffalo and at Harvard Medical School, and then I continually reinforced it with my commercial enterprises. So even though I'm no longer affiliated with Harvard, I still act and think like an academic person, but I have this really deep business sense. So I have the best of both worlds, being able to understand the academic requirements for trial integrity, and then to also have the ability to be able to commercially make it successful. So one of the things which I'm always most proud of is that in all my enterprises, they've always been profitable in every year of their operation. And the enterprise value of my company is well past. It's in about $250 million range now. So how did I get there? I also learned a lot of medicine. So I'm one of these lifelong learners. So if there was, so to me, if somebody was doing a project in cardiovascular surgery or transplantation or orthopedics, I'd learn the area. A doctor would help me to learn it. I could learn it in a couple of days. I'd be a quick study, and I still am at doing that. That's what I love doing it. So even though I could have retired 25 years ago, I still love the joy of the hunt and the ability to create, innovate, and develop. And that's really, I think, the driving force behind me as an entrepreneur, is that I really like making things and making value and succeeding. One of the things that I'm the most proud of is that over 100 million people in the United States have benefited from products which I've helped to get approved at the FDA, and I've got the same kind of numbers over in Europe. So it's really, to me, a great legacy to be able to have been instrumental. So for all those people that are on statins, for all those people that get PSA, for all those people that get CA125, and if your parents, your moms who are getting their T-score, they got me to thank for all those. So I'm like the common denominator behind those. And anybody ever had an artificial hip, an artificial knee, a finger implant, a spinal disc replacement, that's also me. So I've got like a long list of stuff, and figuring out how to make transplants work, treating patients with cardioplegia who have open heart surgery. So it's just a long list. And now I'm working on imaging studies for evaluating suspicious masses of the breast. And we have a new technology that I'm helping to develop and analyze that will basically spare the 1.7 million women that have biopsies each year and cut that number down to about 500,000. There's only about 250,000 that have cancer, and all the unnecessary biopsies that are being done. And then if you're following the news, yesterday they came out with this stool-based DNA test. I was the statistician for that, designing the study, analyzing the data, and next week it's being presented at the FDA where we'll hear whether it's approved. So that's me. I get into all these nifty things. So my life is spent traveling around the world now. I go to Austria, been there already twice this year. I go to Netherlands. I'm flying all over the place. I go to DC, and it's fun. I like it's enjoyable. So that's the embodiment of my entrepreneurial spirit. So I had the guts to set up a business, let it grow the way it did. It grew organically, and then I got acquisitions to take it to like 300 people, another acquisition to get it up to 800. So the company basically, so I've been through all the business cycles, and I'll share with you some of the thoughts behind that as well. So things that made me differentiated, that sort of got me going. I had the Harvard Medical School connection, and I'm the faculty there for 28 years. I'm the leader in the clubhouse with FDA approvals. The next closest person is 29, so I'm sort of sought out very, very much for that kind of thing. I have certain specializations, things that I do. I construct endpoints and I model them, very much like my cousin Bruce. So it's definitely familial, and I have a lot of medical device experience. I've been associated with about 10% of all the FDA device approvals for PMAs have gone through my hands. So that's really a neat track record. And I'm also a specialist in adaptive designs, which is how to design clinical trials. You can look at the results and modify your trial sample size requirements and outcomes by doing that kind of thing. So I've maintained a real currency in what I do, so I didn't just rest on my laurels. Creating a company wasn't enough for me. Maintaining a currency of freshness, being on top of my game, learning the medicine, being a lifelong learner, that's what drove me to really succeed as an entrepreneur. So it's not just about making the money. It was about having the energy and the spark to keep it going. So a little bit of my track record, just to summarize. Back in '76, I realized I liked doing consulting, made some money at it. Then I founded my company in '83. I founded the not-for-profit in '88. I started hiring people. By '96, my contract research organization, which is the entity that it's the name of an entity that does clinical trials, planning them, conducting them. I hired my first doctor in 1996 to be head up our clinical development program. By 2001, I had 100 employees. By 2006, at the advice of my tax attorneys, I sold the CRO that had at that time 175 employees. It was making $20 million in revenues. It hit $3 million EBITDA. So that means it was making a good amount of money, and at that point I could have definitely retired, but still not in my genes to do that. Can't give up the ship. And then I stepped down as CEO a year later. And then I stayed with that group for 6 years and pushed my not-for-profit forward, and then I left that company that I founded to be able to go do my own thing and to be free again and to be able to start it all over again. So here I am, 67 years old, starting it over again and having a good time about it.
I was going to ask if maybe you could step back for a second and explain what a clinical trial is for those people who may not have an idea of how medicines get tested along the way to being approved by the FDA.
Yeah, a clinical trial is a mechanism that is in place to be able to demonstrate the efficacy and safety of a product. So supposing you want to evaluate a diagnostic breast imaging device for basically sparing breast cancer biopsies. What you have to do is you have to basically find a group of women that are already going to have scheduled to have biopsies, and then you evaluate them with a control, which might in this case be ultrasound, and then evaluate them with this new optoacoustics, which is the interrogated light in addition to the ultrasound. And if you can show that the interrogated light and the ultrasound makes better decisions and is able to spare the biopsies, that's the fundamental premise. So to do that, you need a clinical study with 2,000 subjects, and you're looking to show that the ability to identify the benign cases, the accuracy of that improves with the new technology by 10 to 20%. Then it's commercially viable, and that's something that statistically needs to be demonstrated. So all of these trials, they're driven off of a hypothesis, an endpoint, and an outcome, and then it's commercially deemed acceptable, and it's also deemed to be regulatory-wise sound. So all of this is a big world. It's the whole infrastructure. If you open up New England Journal of Medicine, if you listen to the news, you'll always hear about clinical trials. They're in the news all the time, and that's what I live and breathe, these clinical trials. So by my background in the beginning, I knew, how did I get started in this? I knew I liked doing the stats. I knew I liked being an expert. And I also knew the need was there because, the companies were calling, and they came to Harvard, they wanted somebody, and I was the point person. And I knew that the demand was there. That was really good. And I knew I was good at doing it. So that was probably the key thing. You always have to ask yourself the question: if the clients don't call you back, or if they just go somewhere else, you're not good. I never really had that problem, but so I always sort of knew that it was good. It clicked. So I had the what it took. But that's a services kind of sell, and I'll talk a bit about services versus products. So I'm a service guy, but to be service, you really have to have a series of products, and I'll get into that a little bit later too. So what I did is that I also viewed I couldn't just do this myself. I needed to hire people. So I started hiring people. And I started having offices in different countries, in different spots of the U.S. So I needed to be able to, couldn't do it all myself, so I had to leverage it. I needed data managers, I needed clinical monitors, I needed physicians, I needed other statisticians, I needed programmers, I needed medical writers. So I needed all these people, and so I hired them. And then I hired people who could then hire them. And so then I built an organization structure that was basically 6 management levels deep to be able to make that happen. And so it's the good news is that to get that started, I didn't need much money. I started out doing statistical consulting. That made money. Then I used that money to hire other people, and then I used that money to also get an office. So I started having an office by 1988, and then I had my second office by 1996, and then my 20th office by 2005. So it just kept going, and I never needed to borrow money. I had a line of credit, but the enterprise just kept making money, and so I just plowed the money back into the business. So at some point in time, I started what was a good cushion of say $20,000 in 1990. Became like $3 million in 2005 and $8 million in 2013. So you just sort of keep growing that way. So I had lines of credit, never really needed them, just let the businesses run by themselves. So So the neat thing is that, I kept my Harvard appointment till 2005. By then, I figured it was my business in place for 22 years and it was successful, enough money in the bank. I didn't really need to have the cushion of that. So I left the Harvard safety in 2005. So talk about the story. So by my thing, I had this good reputation. I had winning at the FDA. Did a lot of things. I never really have to market. People come to me for work and I don't have to write proposals. I have to write work assignments, but I don't have to write proposals because people sort of know what they're getting, so it is what it is. And then the people that I have as support, they don't have to. I just have to give people budgets. So that's sort of my life. The other thing I did is that I became an advisor to the FDA, so they liked me. And so I give them a lot of advice, and I've done that for about 30 years now. So that was good. And then I still have my alliances at Harvard, so I can always call upon people there. So how did I get where I'm at? I had courage, really, here I was married and children, 8 years old and 4 years old and a home and a mortgage and so I had to have courage to do this. But I knew that I could. And I knew that I had enough clients at the get-go. So the first year I did it, I doubled my salary. So I never looked back after that. So I really got into it, and it was safe. But I had to put in long hours. I had to be available. I had to take calls every night, 24/7. People were going to call me on the evenings and the weekends. I had to do work in the evening and the weekends. So I was always busy. But hey, I saw that. I saw that from my father. I saw that from my uncle. I saw that from all my other role models. So I was used to doing with it. And you get an aggravation. It's never as simple. You always there are failures. Clients can't pay you. This employee, misses a deadline, or this guy resigns. Stuff happens. Junk happens. Forrest Gump said it right. So to make a long story short, and then once you get it going and it's real successful, you can't just let it go to infinity because the tax gods are there, and you have to sort of think about that. So you have to have exit strategies. So it's all about, once you get in the water, you have to figure out how to get out of the water too. So it's sort of what I faced. And so how did I do it? Well, so that I could maintain this online currency, and with it, I hired people that I could delegate to, and that was a good thing. And that let me grow. So my company grew to the number that it had by being able to hire people that I could trust. So I could go off and do my thing, go to the FDA, go off to a client meeting, go to Europe or something for a meeting. I could do that kind of stuff. And I always was pernicious in that I never wanted to borrow money. I couldn't stand the idea of borrowing money. And I never wanted to take advanced deposits from the clients. I always wanted the business to succeed on its own. So this really good sense of money, and this really good sense of business, and a sense of legal. So I sort of had a lot of good things going, which I I motivated the staff. I gave them good bonuses, and I gave them, reinforcement. I had the right skill set, and took care of my staff the nice way. And so here are a few things that I've been mentioning. What are some of the ugly things that you have to deal with? Growth can be ugly if you don't know how to do it. Hiring and firing people, that can be stressful. But you got to figure out how to do it. And clients can be hard. They're not all easy. They don't always have the money to pay you. That's hard. And you've got competition. Gee, a funny thing happened along the way. There's Covance, and there's Quintiles, and there's PowerXL. They're big. They're bigger than my companies. They're competition. And so you have to be price. You can't just set your own price and do your own thing. You just have to run your company well. And I deal with lawyers and investors and financial people. And I had to deal with problems that could come up anytime, day and night. Deal with them. This, sponsor says that. Ugly things can happen. And then I need a lifeline for people to help me. So these are things that really I had to face and deal with. But hey, I'm still standing. And when I left, it was not what I call the horizontal exit strategy. It was a vertical exit strategy. So it's proof that you can get into this. You can deal with the stresses of it, and you can come out of it, happy, make money, and make a difference in life. So that's pretty much where I looked at it. Now, this is a little bit of the details. I won't get into this, but around the corner there's a little chart there about planning, and it's around the corner. Take a look at that. It's that wall. Ben, what's the name of that thing?
Lavin business model canvas.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you, doing that, I did that like the first year I set up my business. I had the common sense to do that. And then we used to do things in those days called the SWOT analysis. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, how you're going to spend your money. That's important to be able to know how to do. And then here's a quote from John Wooden: failure to prepare is preparation for failure. Do not leave anything to chance. If something bad can happen, it will happen. Just don't get too overconfident. And so this is something I won't get into, but you got to learn how to deal with lots of different people. Now in my life, when can you start? Well, here you're all young people. You all might want to start your businesses, start a product, create an app, do something neat. But then you can be like me, a person like me. I'm the right-hand side, started late in life. Knew I'd like to do it, but waited till I was 37 to be able to do this, to start this enterprise. But hey, I did my thing. I still had time to do it. And so, and I took the risk, and I had the courage. But by then, I had a reputation, and people knew me, and I was good. And so I could really get business easier that way. So for someone doing a service business, that's why you sometimes have to wait to be good at service. In product, maybe you can start earlier. But I can't really speak to products, but I can speak to service. And timing is everything, I guess, in life. And here's some of these examples of things which are in cadence and out of cadence. And this is an interesting thing. My life was directly impacted by Richard Nixon's war on cancer that began in 1971. They passed legislation to fund the cancer clinical trials groups. And so all this money got put into clinical trials, and all of a sudden I had this job where, I could start applying this neat statistics and modeling to clinical trials that I was describing earlier. And so Nixon's war on cancer really made a difference so that money could be there. So when I started in -- money was there to be able to fund those trials, and so I could learn all these things, and I could be on the updraft. There are things that I remembered in 1974, while I was at Brown, I created this model for how tumors grow, angiogenesis. And the grant got turned down back then because people said, well, your representation of a tumor, it's more complicated than your 3D model. And I sat there, scratched my head, well, someday there'll be a time. Well, angiogenesis is now the rage, and it's really an important thing. So it's an idea that I had 40 years ago, but was probably 10 years too early. And then there was another thing I did with tumor modeling, where you want to evaluate a cancer therapy. People used to look at response. Did it shrink or not? It was a binary event. I said you should use all the data. You should use the serial data. And that idea I published in 1981. It took them till 1995 to accept it. So I was 14, 15 years early on that one. But hey, a good idea. It comes around and it survives. And then 1991, I wrote a paper on modeling biomarkers, and it took that one 20 years to get accepted. So hey, if you're around long enough, your stuff will get accepted, and if you do a good thing, it'll get evaluated. So these are some of the other milestones in my life. So some of them I was a little early, and some of them I was on time for. But hey, collectively, I'm not complaining. So now another thing you want to think about, how you fund your business. Do you fund it with stock? Do you fund it with loans? That's another matter. I'll leave you to worry about that, but that's the details. And other things here that probably you want to do is you always have to differentiate. Whatever you do, differentiate. That means do something that you're known for doing, that's your strong suit. I won't get into the details of that, but bottom line, you succeed when you can have a plan and you can differentiate. And then couple other things to mention here. You want to always know how you have to be your own self-critic. You have to be able to look at yourself in the mirror and say, I know how I think, I know what I do well, and I know what I don't do well, and I know what I can delegate, and I know what I can't delegate. I did a good job at delegation. My company grew to the size it did because of my delegatory skills, not because of my entrepreneurial skills. So the entrepreneurial got me in the water, but staying in the water and learning how to swim, that was another side of me. That wasn't the entrepreneurial side. It was more the deterministic, dedicated, strategic side of me. So that's pretty much how I got there. Here's the product versus service side. I'm good on the service side, but what I do is that I've turned my service into a series of products. Like I have database capture systems that my people have developed that capture data. I have programs that do adaptive sample size calculations. I have programs that use SAS to generate nice output. So I've turned my business, which is service on the outside, to a series of products, and its success is driven by those products. Couple things to keep in mind. Watch the Shark Tank. I hope you all watch that show. That really is a great show. It's funny, it's entertaining, and boy, it's truthful. Tell you, just watch it, and here's some thoughts. The other one to watch is Apprentice. Apprentice isn't so much to be an entrepreneur, but how to work with a team and how to build on team and success and that type of thing. That's something that I also took a lot of pride in building a team. That came to me a little later in life. Probably that's why I'm glad I waited till I was 37, because by the time I was 45, I really had the rhythm for how to work with a team and build a team and make people incentivized and to direct them and to delegate. I couldn't have done that when I was 25 or 30, but I could do it with some years of maturation. And you always have to ask yourself the question, what do you do well? I could ask myself that question. I was lucky. I could do a lot of things well. I say that in all modesty because I was able to talk to a lot of different people, and that's really, I think, what drove me to sort of being able to set up a business, make it grow, make it expand, make it flourish, get a good reputation. I had the right knack. But I'm not the only one. There's a lot of other people in my industry. You could go to Dennis Gillings, who set up Quintiles. He's the same way as me. When we get together, it's like our lives are interconnected. Or Jovan Rickenbach, who heads Power Excel. So all these people, they're very much my kindred souls. And again, we all worry about these things, and we all have figured out how to solve them. So being an entrepreneur, you got to cover all your bases. And so basically now to sort of, as we get to the end here, you have so many neat tools. You have an LLC that you can set up. Don't set up an LLC if you want value from your company, you want to sell it. If you want to sell your company, set up a C Corp. That's the best advice I'll ever give you. Set up a C Corp. You get the same kind of, you get liability protection, and that's the kind of thing that people can buy from you for $50 or $100 million or $1 billion. So the C Corp is the way to go. LLC is short-term cute, but it just hits your regular tax return, as does an S Corp. So a C Corp is the way to go. You can get small business loans. You can market. You can use Vistaprint for creating business cards and brochures. You can use LinkedIn for connecting to your colleagues and your peers. The internet is great. You get so much free information on the internet. That's where I do a lot of my learning. QuickBooks to manage your general accounting and your ledger, and also in my day, I'll tell you, there weren't many women and there weren't many people of minorities going and being entrepreneurs, starting business. But now it's different, and it's a heck of a lot better. And I really take pride in being able to see people succeed, and of all types. And that's the most important thing. And that's what I think our society is just so much better today, that many people can start a business, and the barriers to entry are much lower, and there's more sources of capital that you can borrow. So I guess that's it. I think I've done my good deed for finishing up on time. Anybody have any questions for me? Because I'm more than willing to stay and entertain further or talk about whatever.
We'll take 2 questions, and then you guys can come see it. Sean.
Okay, I have a comment and a question. We have Shark Tank viewing parties on Wednesday nights, so we make sure all of our members see that show, just to let you know.
We watch Shark Tank.
That's nice. That's a lot of fun.
We watch Shark Tank.
Yeah.
My question is, you mentioned SWOT analysis for your business, and it sounds like you did it on yourself because you said your strength was in delegating, and the way you present yourself, you seem like a real people person and leader. So I'm wondering, what was on your SWOT analysis on yourself? What was your biggest weakness that was the most useful for self-developing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually answered that to the person I was sitting next to on the flight here. And the one thing which I tended, if I were to make a mistake, sometimes I would hire a person and I would imagine that that person would be in sync with me more than I thought they would be. So I would hire a person and then they would create their own autonomy. So the vision and the dream and the way I wanted to have something done. See, I wanted to have an entrepreneurial feeling throughout the company. I wanted people to be empowered to be able to create, solve, and problem solve. And some of these people that I hired, that doctor who I hired in 1996, she was a good hire in retrospect, very technically solid, but she tourniqueted that to her direct reports, and she wanted to be that person who made the decision for them. So the biggest mistakes that I ever made were the mistakes of entrusting someone to leverage my way of thinking and them not exercising and executing in that same way. And she was with the company for 3 or 4 years, and then it became obvious that there was friction, and that's when the company developed certain political feelings inside. We had 100 people, and I didn't like politics, and I made it a point to her, and she got the handwriting on the wall, and she then left. And then the person I replaced her with, they turned out to also not be good. And then the person who replaced that person turned out to be good. So it took a couple of tries, but I sort of lost 4 years of cadence that way. But the company still grew, and the other departments still functioned. But it took a while to get back that, what I call entrepreneurial spirit. But that was my biggest mistake in terms of my weakness. But one I could realize that I made, and I corrected it.
One more question for Dan.
Yeah, you mentioned you started your company in 1983, and then you got your first office 5 years later. Now, I know you didn't have Skype or GoToMeeting in that time. Did you have any problems communicating with your team in the meantime?
Well, they were all local. So everybody who was on my team, they were all local. They were a phone call away. They were an office walk away. So I surrounded myself with kindred spirits from Harvard School of Public Health and Harvard Medical School who were right local and nearby, and they could do their thing. Now in those days, the PC computing was coming into vogue, and SAS was available to do statistical analysis. So therefore, on a 386 and a 486, your father or your grandfather probably had one of those, and so 486s were the first machines that could reliably do analyses. And then you'd call somebody up on the phone. Isn't that horrible? You use phones. And they had internet. Internet was available back then in a various version to be able to communicate with people. I would hire my first person remotely probably by 1990. So just to give you a case in point. And then that was really great because we could have monitors and programmers and statisticians. And now there's no limit. It's just a wonderful era.
So thank you guys for coming out here in Phil's presentation. I think that we could take a lot out of that. Something I just wanted to bring back up is that Phil mentioned he always loved learning and continues to learn today. So being an eternal student and just always, taking in new information and analyzing it and learning from it, that'll serve you well in the future and forever. We're going to bring out lunch now, and it's a special treat today. And if you have any questions, Phil's going to stick around to eat, and there's a bunch of really smart people in the room. So help yourself to lunch, networking, and thank you for coming, guys.
Thank you.